What a joy and a privilege it is to be here this afternoon. We are so glad that you have made the time and opportunity to come. We are here today to honor a man that has been a champion of freedom all around the world. That's right, that's right. And Reverend Jackson, on your 83rd birthday, we salute you. Thank you for your service to all of humanity, whether it's presidents, kings, and queens, or people with no titles or no labels. You have worked to ensure the rights of the least of these is remembered and protected, and as well as holding those in power accountable. We are here today at the behest of our great mayor because he wanted to give you your flowers while you live. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. At this time, we are going to open up with prayer because it's just right to have prayer. Reverend Charles Jenkins is going to come and open us up in prayer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy birthday, Reverend Jackson. Somebody make some noise for the Reverend. We celebrate our great mayor and our first lady. Come on, let's celebrate them. Come on, let's all bow our heads. Father, thanks so much for this auspicious and momentous occasion to celebrate a man who has meant so much, means so much, and will forever mean so much to Chicago and to the entire world. Thank you for his love, his life, his legacy, and his legend. Thank you for his unselfish, selfless, sacrificial commitment to men, women, boys, and girls at every level of life. For all of his life, he has poured in and filled up so many people with goodness. Thank you for his commitment for a more perfect union and his commitment to use his life as a river and not a swamp. A river where blessings flow through and flow to. Thank you for Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson. We pray your continued blessings on him. And let me take a second and thank you for Mayor Brandon Johnson for his commitment to do good for our city and for humanity. People are quicker to put flowers on you than to give flowers to you. And we thank you for this day as we join Reverend Jackson in watching him smell these beautiful flowers. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and thank God. Come on, clap your hands.
Thank you, Reverend Jackson. Thank you, Reverend Jenkins. And thank you, Reverend Jackson. At this time, we are going to have a few remarks from individuals who are close to Reverend and who mean so much to his life and to our city. Remarks from Reverend Jeanette Wilson, who will represent Rainbow Push, after which we will have remarks from, you got some fans here, all right? From Reverend Jackson's pastor, Pastor Reginald Sharp will come. It sounds like the ship is in the house. And after which we will have a song from Mr. Maham.
When I think about Reverend Jesse Jackson, one must always go back, as Mrs. Jackson would often tell us, back to Dr. King. He sent him to Chicago. And I think when you think about what he has meant to this city and to each one of us who live here, work here each and every day, he has led fights for workers. He has negotiated with teachers union, with the firefighters union. He has been that one that Ever since he was ordained by Reverend Clay Evans at Fellowship and stood in a food line, he said every year we had to make sure that we had food for those who were hungry. And so one year he had a mountain of food for people in the city who had been forgotten, had been left out, had not been thought about. So when I think of Reverend Jackson, he's been everywhere in Chicago. He marched through Gage Park. He marched through Bridgeport, where we now live, where we now work. And now when I think about how he fought for CHA to be open, how he fought for teachers, black teachers who were not certified, Reverend Jackson made sure they were grandfathered in and they didn't have to take another test to teach our children. Reverend Jackson fought for equity in public education. And then when he first came here, he was concerned about the fact that we had black businesses that had no access to have their products in the stores. We had hair care products that he fought to get in Walgreens and other stores. He fought for our food companies to showcase their wares on the shelves of stores. And then he taught us, if you don't cut us in, we'll cut you out. And so we boycotted A&P and National Tea. And then we had 6 black banks in the city of Chicago because Reverend Jackson, we used to call them piggy banks because they didn't have the kind of investments that other banks had. And so he expanded opportunities for the banks. And then for black restaurants, he made sure that we knew who they were. And we had to have eat-ins, we had shop-ins, we had buy-ins. And then at Christmas, he said, I want you to know what Christmas really looks like for black people. And so we didn't have a Santa Claus with a white beard and white face and white hair. We had black Santa Claus. We had a soul Santa Claus. And then I think people don't know Mrs. Jackson is the most creative of all of the Jacksons. And so one of the things that I learned was her artistic bent. And, you know, Expo in many ways was Reverend Jackson gets all of the credit. But Mrs. Jackson worked with prisoners and prison art. And I remember showcasing some of the most talented painters and sketchers in the world were showcased at Expo. Reverend Jackson made sure we knew about the Jackson 5 before they were the Jackson 5. We knew about Michael Jackson at Black Expo, at Amphitheater. So all of these things that Reverend Jackson's brought to Chicago. And one thing I want to say as I take my seat, I remember that in all that he's done, and all the negotiating, and all of the marches, and all of the sacrifices of time and talent that he made, no mayor, other than this mayor, thought enough to say thank you by offering him a key to the city. And so we thank you, Mayor Johnson. We are so excited. It took, just stand and give him a round of applause. And so when I think about this freedom fighter, he has worn so many people out. He wears out iron. And so, Reverend Jackson, we love you. We thank you for you're still here 83 years later, 60 years in Chicago, 40 years fighting for us. And we thank you so very much. God bless you.
Somebody say, I am.
I am.
Somebody.
Somebody.
I am.
I am.
Somebody.
Somebody.
Stop the violence.
Stop the violence.
Save the children.
Save the children.
Stop the violence.
Stop the violence.
Save the children.
Save the children.
Down with dope.
Down with dope.
Up with hope.
Up with hope.
If you're somebody, put those hands together. For decades, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson has been reminding the world that we are somebody. In an empire that makes us often feel like we are nobodies, there is a preacher on the south side of Chicago that keeps reverberating a word of encouragement and inspiration to children and seasoned people alike to remind us that we are somebody. Reverend Jackson, we've really just gathered here today on your 83rd birthday to simply say thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your sacrifices.
Thank you for walking with kings and queens and never losing the common touch. Reverend Jackson can make an ant feel like they're special. Reverend Jackson has been able to share light into this world, and we cannot celebrate him without celebrating his entire family, his wife and his children, and we thank you all. We thank you for sharing your beloved with all of us. And to one of the greatest mayors on this side of heaven and his wife, we salute you and we thank you. We thank you. And you're right, it does feel like church in here. And we're grateful that Rainbow Push Operation Breadbasket had its commencement in the basement of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. And we're grateful that our church stands today because you assisted Reverend Clay Evans in securing the loan so that the building could be built after it was delayed because of white supremacy and racism in this city. And Fellowship has come also to say thank you, Reverend Jackson. We are here with our Pastor Emeritus, Pastor Charles Jenkins, and a host of people to thank you because you have helped us to understand on every level that if there's a river, we can cross it. If there's hope, we can share it. If there's a goal, we can meet it. If there's a building, we can construct it. If there's a lesson, we can learn it. If there's a mountain, we can climb it. If there's a storm, we can survive it. If there's a class, we can pass it. If there's a poem, we can write it. If there's a hell, we can miss it. If there's a heaven, we can get it. And if there is an accomplishment, we can reach it. We can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Happy birthday, and we love you.
What a blessing and an honor to be here. I'm so grateful to be here and honored. I spent 4 years as music director of Operation Push, and during that time, there's a song that we wrote together. And it goes something like this. Some say my future not that bright. Some say I'm useless, unholy, and not living right. But beginning of the day, I look in the mirror and say, I am somebody. Oh, I believe the future's in my hands. I tell every girl, boy, woman, or man, if I can think it, I can receive it, create it and believe it. So I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Maybe down but not destroyed, empty but not void. I am somebody. Y'all sing, oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. You can turn and walk away, but the end of this day, I am somebody. We do this. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. You can turn and walk away, but the end of this day, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. At the end of this day, they can turn and walk away, but guess what? I am somebody. God bless you. Thank you.
Reverend Jackson, we have a treat. Mr. Garner is here from your founding chapter from Omega Psi Phi.
Just a quick correction, that is the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Good afternoon. Certainly a blessing to be here today. I'm here representing the alumni and members of Pi Psi chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. Reverend Jackson was initiated at Pi Psi chapter in the spring of 1960. in the day when students attending the University of Illinois were certainly not allowed to live in university-sanctioned housing, and a housing solution that was available to students like Reverend was joining a fraternity, a black fraternity, or sorority in women's cases. And Reverend looked to Fraternity Row and joined the Brothers of Omega Psi Phi 26 years before I got there. He was certainly a pioneer and set the standard for not only brothers at the University of Illinois, but for brothers around our fraternity internationally. We're certainly proud of him as we celebrate 95 years of history on that campus this year, later this month, and we look forward to many more. Thank you.
Y'all finished? All right. At this time, we're going to keep our program moving. We're going to have remarks from Congressman Jonathan Jackson, who will be the family representation.
Congratulations, Dad. I stand here today with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and respect for the people of this great city, the city of Chicago. And I want to thank the Honorable and great Mayor Brandon Johnson and First Lady Johnson for working with the elected officials, with the activists in the church community to bestow this honor upon my father, Reverend Jesse Jackson. As a member of the Jackson family, I am indebted to the respect and kindness that you show my father on this day of his 83rd birthday. And what a fitting way to wish Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson a very happy birthday, giving him a key to the city he is truly considered to be his home. I think it is entirely appropriate to give great men and great women flowers while they can still smell them. People who make an indelible mark on the lives of millions of people, who push the moral arc of this nation in the right direction, should know that their work has not been in vain. And if Jesse Jackson had not been born, Dad, 83 years ago, we would have had to create one because the history of this nation would not be the same without you, Dad. The more I think about his life, the more it becomes clear to me that while we cannot choose where we are born, we do get to choose where we call home. Sweet home Chicago. The story of Jesse Louis Jackson cannot be told without also telling the story, Mom, of the city of Chicago. I submit to you today that all of the fire and all of the fervor that Jesse Jackson amassed in order to keep the light of the dream alive, he got it from his interactions from the city of Chicago. When the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. assigned a young Jesse Jackson to lead the breadbasket campaign from the city of Chicago, Reverend King created a relationship between a man and a city that would stand the test of time. When the Reverend Clay Evans put his arms around my father and embraced him as one of his spiritual sons, Reverend Evans was cementing an indelible relationship between a prophet and his people. That's why it is altogether fitting that we should be here today. Dad, you didn't change the Democratic Party from New Orleans, you changed it from Chicago. Dad, you didn't make corporations include African Americans in their contracts and leadership positions from Wall Street in New York City. You did it from Chicago. And let's be very clear, Jesse Jackson didn't run for the presidency of the United States in 1984 and 1988, thereby lighting the way for those who would come behind him to believe that it was possible from Atlanta, Georgia, or from Los Angeles, or from Houston, or from Raleigh, North Carolina. He did it from the city of Chicago. There is a magic between this man and this city that allows great things to happen when people come together. Because there's no place like Chicago. The city of broad shoulders, the city that works, the Windy City, Chi-Town, my kind of town, the city that was meant to be, the city by the lake and the prairies. You did it right here, Dad, from Chicago. And when you come here, and when you come from here, all Chicagoans, you stand up differently. When you're from Chicago and you face the bitter cold in the winter and the hard heat from the summer, you walk in the room because your blood is different. People from Chicago don't bow their heads, and we don't duck our tails in between our legs in the face of opposition and conflict. We come from Chicago. Being from Chicago gives you a dignity in the sense of self-respect that makes you shine when others are afraid of the light, Mayor. So Chicago, I want to thank you for embracing my father and being so good to my family. Chicago, you gave my father and my mother 2 representatives into the House of Congress. Thank you, Chicago. I want to thank you for that. Thank you for being a remarkable city where great things are possible. Thank you for having given Jesse Jackson the key to the city. The Jackson family gives you the key to our heart. God bless you, and I thank you so very, very much. I left a moment too soon. Without further ado, I am so honored to introduce a man that I call a friend and a brother, a man who has taken on this enormous challenge to govern this great city, a man that stands as a giant trying to dig us out of a hole, a man that is willing to take on the heat, that braves the cold, a man that is keenly articulate, instinctively intelligent, persuasively analytical, the honorable, not from the east side or the south side, not from the north side, but indeed, some would say, the blessed side, the west side of Chicago, the Honorable Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you so much. Please be seated. And let me just say, of my time in office, this has to be one of the blackest experiences that this city has ever experienced. I'm coming out of my office and I'm talking to my wife, and I said, I hear gospel music and I smell chicken. Welcome to Fellowship Church of God in Christ here at City Hall. Let me also just say, Reverend, my remarks are brief because the eloquence and the capacity of admiration has already filled this temple. But I will say that from your first pastor, Pastor Clay Evans, every pastor after that, let's give it up for Pastor Reverend Clay Evans and his legacy. But I will say, Reverend, every pastor after your first pastor, why do their suits get tighter and tighter? These are not in my remarks. It's just an observation. It's just, your pastor had a robe, and then these other 2 brothers that came afterwards, it's just like all right. But I do, please give it up for Pastor Jenkins and Pastor Sharp for carrying the legacy. Happy birthday, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Happy birthday. We're here to celebrate you on this day. Chicago is very pleased and proud to have you as our son, father, and brother, champion. I'm grateful that there are so many amazing people that are here today, elected officials, friends, and loved ones, and even to the press corps. Thank you for covering blackness the right way. You know, as we gather here today to not just lift up the accomplishments of Reverend Jackson and his legacy and celebrate, this is also an opportunity for us to be reminded that there is only one pathway forward. And I do wish, much like Reverend Jackson probably wished, that the road would be easier. But we knew that the road to freedom would be long. And when President Nelson Mandela told us that story of that long road to freedom, he knew that one day that the city of Chicago will be a part of that story. In fact, President Mandela is the last person in the city of Chicago to receive a key from an administration. Reverend Jackson, you are a lifetime and in living color. And you understood that the color had to be multiple colors. The Rainbow Coalition that you understood, but through the lens of our personal experiences as Black people, you've been able to eloquently and profoundly stitch together the hopes and dreams of not just our ancestors, but the hopes and dreams of other people groups. And you were able to prophetically connect our hopes and aspirations to people who also sought justice. You've empowered the lives of people all over the globe. And so, yes, this is a celebration. And yes, it is truly my honor to be a part of this celebration. But I want you to be very clear that this is about us cementing your leadership into the halls of power for generations to come. You know, I'm grateful for your wife, Mrs. Jackson. I am. There are very few people on the planet that you can be afraid of and still want to hug. Sorry, Mrs. Jackson, but I'm just for real. But your creativity and your bravery and your steadiness has shepherded this moment into existence. And I know that because I am not the man that I am without the Black woman that I lay down with every single night. And so, as the history maker that you are, the first Black woman, first lady in the history of Chicago, next to the first Black first lady of the globe, Stacey Johnson and Jacqueline Jackson. God bless the two of you. Reverend, back to you. I'm going to give you a few more seconds here. But your leadership and your wisdom and advocacy is loved. You know, you said something to me some years ago. You said, Brandon, people celebrate the Jackie Robinsons of the world. But they often forget about the Willie Mazes. You said, Brandon, you're Willie Mays. You said that. But what I'm so appreciative of, you understood that it wasn't enough to be the first. that your legacy only matters based on how many people you can bring along. And Reverend, from the White House to corporate leaders, you have produced Willie Mazes all over the world. And so with that, in closing, we thank you. We thank you that the long road to freedom and our liberation is a little bit shorter now. Your mentor said that he may not get there. But I can see on the other side of the mountain. Put me in A flat. No, I'm teasing. Almost, Reverend Jenkins. I almost went there. But I can see on the other side of the mountain that whether you're a black boy, white girl, brown, black, brown, white, Asian, you understood that we can stand the test of time. And those who wish to disrupt this movement, make no mistake about it, the city of Chicago will not only be better, stronger, and safer. The city of Chicago will be what your mentor prophesied a generation ago. When he came to the west side of Chicago, Dr. King said that if we can figure out housing in Chicago, if we can figure out public education in Chicago, if we can figure out transportation in Chicago, if we can figure out good paying jobs in Chicago, if we can figure out healthcare in Chicago, if we can figure out environmental justice in Chicago, we can do it anywhere in the world. Well, Chicago, guess what, you all? The world is ready for transformation because we have figured it out because of Reverend Jesse Jackson. God bless you. Thank you very much. So now, with the power that the people of Chicago gave me, okay, I'm going to say that one more time because apparently there's some people who are confused about the power that I have. There's a few people that somehow forgot there was a whole election that gave me the power to transform this city. So to Reverend Jackson, to Mrs. Jackson, to the entire Jackson family, thank you all. Y'all saw Jonathan, but can I just say real quick, Yusuf and Santita are the real deal too, y'all. Santita will get you straight with a smile. Before you know it, you are taking orders and saying, yes, ma'am. With the power that's been vested in me, the city of Chicago recognizes the profound impact that Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. has had on our city. Whereas born October 8th, 1941, whereas a civil rights leader notably known to work alongside of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whereas you've devoted your life to fight for justice, leading numerous marches and campaigns, whereas making history as a trailblazer in American politics in your run for the presidency, whereas you have been honored with tremendous, profound contributions of your humanitarian and tireless advocacy for social justice, I, Brandon Johnson, mayor of the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago, do hereby proclaim October 8th, 2024 as Reverend Jesse Jackson Senior Day, and I present to you, let me just say before I tell them what this is, I wanted to be very clear, Reverend, this is a key, but it don't open up all the doors. There's some doors that's just meant for me and my wife. But for the rest of the doors, brother, the key to the city of Chicago.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Reverend Jackson. Happy birthday. Y'all got it? To you. Happy birthday, Reverend.